FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and with me is Mike Gazzola, Easy Residual Income. You can find his site over at amazonsecrets.net. And Mike, gotten a lot of interesting emails since we resumed the podcast, which makes me really happy. One person who is listening, Brian, wants to know, being a real estate person, what do you see the advantages of Amazon over real estate or combining the two for long-term wealth creation?
Yeah, that's a good question because I hear that all the time. You know, people that have bought my books, people that listen to my real estate podcast, you know, people are just wondering. They said, well, it seems like you're focusing most of your time on the online income now, as opposed to real estate. And that is true to an extent. I mean, you know, to me, what I like to do now is, so before the old model that I used to do, and I'll just share it with you guys, is I would buy properties way under market value from the auction. I'd fix them up and rent them out and then flip them and make a really good income that way, right? But the problem with that, so it's twofold. So the first problem, and not even a problem because I actually like doing it, was so as soon as you sell a property, now you got to find the next one, right? Because otherwise the conveyor belt kind of stops. So if you don't find the next deal and invest in that deal, then it's kind of like you get a kink in your conveyor belt. So that was problem one. And then the second problem was that with real estate, because what I like to do is I like to buy properties cash through the auction, which most of you listening already know that. And what I started to discover was that it started taking a lot of my time, right? I was flying, you know, a couple thousand miles here, 1,000 miles there, 1,500 miles there. And I was finding the deals, but the problem was, you know, I have 2 young kids, right? So I'd sell a house, everything was great. And then you take those profits, or you sell 3 or 4 in a month, right? But now you got to take those profits and you got to reinvest. Not so much the profits. I mean, I would take some, but reinvest my basis at least, right? Like the amount that I actually invested last time, maybe put a little more into it. But what would happen is I was flying all around the country, still finding good deals, but I didn't really have the time freedom. So that's when, because part of what I did in real estate was selling online. So I was using the same strategies, techniques that I use currently for physical products. I was using those same techniques for real estate. And some people listening right now are like, how can you sell a house online, right? But it was just surprised. Like, you know,
you'd be very surprised how easy it is to do.
Well, yeah, 15 years ago, when I was in the car business, I was in finance, right? People would say, you can't sell a car online, right? Like they would think that was ridiculous. Like sell a car online. Like, you know, who's going to buy a car online?
That'll
and now
never happen. You got to get ripped off by a salesman. You got to be harassed. Well, you were in the business. You got to be harassed and you got to be worn down and marched out of the dealership beaten and broken in your new buggy, right?
Yeah, that's right. And you know, I've always been in finance when I was in the car business, right? So I was mainly working with the banks, getting the people the best interest rate, but I was submerged in the business. And when our, you know, one of the 3rd or 4th biggest dealership in the country, you know, started selling online, people were thinking like, what are you going to do? You're going to start selling online? Like, how are you going to? And then now that is like the premier way to buy a car, right? Is online. And I'm not saying I'm just giving you that same example. It's not the premier way to buy a house, but it certainly attracts a lot of international investors and people all over the world looking to buy real estate. But with that being said, nowadays, I take those same techniques of buying and selling houses online, and I do that with physical products where it's much easier to sell 1,000 of a $30, $40, $50 product than it is to sell 4 or 5 houses that are 6 figures, right? And that's about the threshold, right? Like that takes about the same amount of work. But what I started realizing is, hey, okay, hang on a second. You know, if I start investing online and investing in physical products and finding what makes the most sense, what I can do is take the profits that I'm making from selling low ticket items and invest those profits in real estate. And even now, I own a lot of real estate free and clear around the country. And it is a great method, right? But for the general public that doesn't have a huge, multi 6-figure, maybe 7-figure nest egg to invest in real estate, it's a pretty hard entry point. So real estate is still amazing to do with the profits that I generate through my online businesses, right? Where it's low ticket items, really high volume, selling good products at a good price, out marketing the competition, and doing very well through that method with low ticket items that are much easier to sell. So now my goal is to take those, and it's what I've been doing, take those profits, invest them in real estate. So the number one question I get is, it's not, and that's exactly it. Why did you shift from real estate to online products and making money online? And it's not really that I shifted. It just made a lot more sense because I'll give you a real life example. So one of the last properties that I bought, this property was $30,000 through the auction. Now, of course, I'm going like around universities, but more distressed areas like upstate New York. I'm investing in like Arizona, Florida. So, but I'm always looking for properties that are on the lower end, but good, solid properties around universities, things like that. That's just one of the techniques that I use. But with that being said, just giving you kind of a little background, I want to give you a real life example. So I paid about $30,000 for the property, and then I had to put about, I'm just guessing, and it's approximate, maybe 18,000 into the property, right? Mm-hmm. So now I'm in it just shy of, say, 50,000. And then now I start to generate a monthly rent, right? Now this is a duplex property, so the return is a little better than normal. So it's a duplex property, and I get $750 on the lower, $750 on the upper. So now that generates a $1,500 a month income based on a $15,000 investment. That's pretty dang good, right? But to the bulk of the people listening right now, still tying up the $50,000 cash might not be conceivable at this point. So what I started realizing is, okay, that same $50,000 investment that generates me a gross of $1,500. Now you have property taxes, you have management fees, you always take about 10% off the top each year to reinvest into the property. So it doesn't mean you're going to have all these repairs at once, but you kind of want to create a 10% reserve. So whatever rents I receive, I kind of want to put 10% as a reserve, meaning that when I need to fix whatever, a sink, a ceiling fan, some doors, put in a new screen door or front door or whatever, right? It's like you kind of build up that cash based on the reserves you're building. And when you initially remodel a property, you're probably not going to have many repairs right away, but a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years down the road, you might have some more significant expenses, right? You might have to replace the windows. You might have to replace a roof. So building up that 10% reserve is just kind of like cushioning the blow that's going to come at some point, right? So, but with all that being said, you knock all that down, you might only be netting $700-800 a month, right? After the property taxes, after the management fees, after your reserve accounts for repairs and things like that, which is still good. On $50,000, most people would consider, even, let's just say it's $700 a month, right? That's $8,400 a year. That's still pretty good. It's over 15%, in the middle between 15 and 20% return on your money net year over year. But what I've realized is like, okay, not even 50,000, buying $2,000-3,000 worth of inventory and at the same margins that the general public are generating, right? So not real estate revenues. I'm talking about general population. They're going to be online sellers, people like me, marketers, people that have online businesses. You might, and I want to keep it real simple for you guys, but if you're able to invest $2,500 and get 6 or 7 back initially, right? Now you take that 6 or 7, you reinvest it in more inventory or additional products, which is exactly what I teach. You're able to build to even a more substantial income with 10% of the investment, right? It's like investing 10% of what you would in a real estate deal, but getting back the same amount of monthly revenue initially, and then building upon that into a 6-7 figure a year business. And I'll use myself as an example. So when I first started selling on Amazon, my partner and I, we each took $5,000, put it into an account, and we built our business. And that has now done multi 6 figures. And just so far this year, our online businesses have done multi 7 figures, but this is just last year, right? So when you look at it from that point of view, it's not that I diverted from real estate, but it's more taking a smaller piece of what you've already built. And that might be your savings from work. That might be money that you just stockpiled over the years. But it's like taking a small piece of that with the potential to grow to a 7-figure business. That house that I bought is not going to be worth 7 figures ever. And not even when my grandkids are my age, will that house be worth 7 figures, right? But with that same investment, not even that same investment, but 10% of that investment, 5% of that investment, building something that could be worth, and without exaggeration, 6-7 figures, and either sell that business, reinvest, or continue to launch products and grow your brand.
Yeah, well, hey, I mean, if you look at the return on investment and what you're doing there, and then the ability to keep reinvesting your profits, because look, if you're making 50, 60% a year on your investment, and actually it's more than that, and then you reinvest your profits, more inventory, more products, you would need to have 20 or 30 houses, at least, maybe 50, to get near to what you're earning now off your Amazon business.
Yeah, and when you take like what my partner and I each put in, 5,000, when we started our first Amazon business, that's 10 grand, right? Well, we've done 1,000% in a month on that same 5,000 each, right? So like real estate, of course, it's a great place to sock away money. Of course, it's a great long-term investment. As far as investments go, like to me, I'm not going to buy, I'm not going to put 50 grand into a mutual fund that someone else controls my destiny. If I'm going to invest 50 grand in all the majors that are out there, real estate would be my choice. But when you start getting unconventional, like kind of like Amazon is at the forefront. I mean, it's at 10% of where it's going to be 10 years from now. Mm-hmm. But kind of getting in at the forefront, which we're not even there yet. People ask, is it too late? Did I miss the boat? It's like, that's what, when cars came out, right? It's like, oh, what are these, it's a car. I mean, come on, like, this has no future. And then now all of a sudden, every single person, it was like horse and buggy was the way to go, right? Right. Which right now, having a retail store, a brick and mortar store in a plaza or whatever is the way to go. That was horse and buggy. Then all of a sudden, these crazy things called cars came out and people thought, well, who's ever going to buy a car? Well, now nobody has a horse and buggy and everyone has a car, right? It's the wave of the future. So we're like 100 years back in time right now to where the automobile started to replace a horse and buggy. And that's exactly where we're at right now. So are we already there? Like, is online beating out all brick and mortars? Absolutely not. But check back with me in 10 years and we'll see if online sales beat out every brick and mortar store in the country.
Oh, Mike.
And that's not a hypothetical. That's a guarantee.
Thousands of stores are closing. I think 8,000 stores are expected to close in the U.S. this year. Or maybe it was last year that that number closed. No, I think this year, 8,000 stores expected to close. And, the chains, every day you hear the retail bankruptcies. It's not all from Amazon. There's a lot of online competitors to Amazon, but a big chunk of it, and perhaps the reason why online shopping has become as acceptable as it is due in large part to Amazon. They're not the entire reason these stores are tanking, but they're a good chunk of it. And hey, we went back from last episode talking about how you don't need a warehouse. Well, every one of these stores that you go to, retail stores, has a warehouse. Even if you sell on eBay, you still got to fulfill the product, and that could require a warehouse. But with this, no warehouse, just investment and adept marketing, and then you get a return.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point, right? So just think of that for a second. So a brick and mortar store, they get their inventory from a distributor, right? That's how it works. They're not going and sourcing all their products all over the world and getting rock bottom pricing. What they're doing is they're buying from a distributor that's buying from a wholesale. It's like there's all these chains of people making money. What they're not doing, every single brick and mortar store is not going right to the source and getting rock bottom pricing. That's what's so cool about, and Amazon is just the low hanging fruit, right? Amazon's not the end all be all of making money online. That's your entry point. That's the low hanging fruit. Then we get into building Shopify stores and e-commerce in general and kind of cutting out Amazon. But Amazon is kind of like Little League, right? Like no Major League Baseball player is playing baseball right now that didn't play Little League. If so, maybe 1 out of 1,000, right? But Major League Baseball players started with Little League. In Little League, they weren't guaranteed some Major League Baseball multi-million-dollar a year contract, but they had to start. They had to start training, right? Little League was their training to get them into the major leagues. So think of Amazon as just the low-hanging fruit. That's just your entry point. It's easy. They warehouse, they handle customer service, emails, complaints, all that fun stuff. And that's one of the amazing things is kind of like a launch pad for if you have the right guidance and the right mentor. And I hate using the word easy, but it's a systematic process to navigate. And that's what I love about it, right? Is people with no experience can come out of the blue and jump right in. And Amazon, we're at the forefront right now. It's like when cars came out, when they were 10 years into cars over horse and buggies, there was a lot of horse and buggy sellers that went out of business, right? It didn't happen all at once. It was like some of the guys selling horse and buggies started going out of business. Some of the people selling cars started popping up. And then the shift just became more and more dramatic. It's like more and more horse and buggy sellers went out of business. More and more people started selling cars. At some point, there was literally no horse and buggy sellers anymore, right? It didn't make sense. Maybe if you go to the middle of Pennsylvania right now, you might still be able to buy a horse and buggy, but I've never seen one for sale myself and in my entire life.
Oh, for sure. No, that is one of the amazing things about what we're doing here with Amazon is that it's ushering in a transformation. Because look, most products, you don't really need to feel them. You don't need to touch them. You just need to look at them and get an idea of what they're about. And then you go ahead and you buy them. And look, Amazon guarantees your satisfaction, guarantees you're going to be happy with the product. And then boom, you get it in a couple of days and that's it. And then, on to the next product. So yeah, to be in that marketplace, and that's what it is, really can give you returns way past any of the boring returns that you get in real estate. Boring and steady. And let's face it, in real estate, you own an asset and that asset's probably going to stick around for a long time and appreciate in value, but nowhere near what Amazon is doing for you right now.
That's right. And that's why I say Amazon is just the low-hanging fruit. It's your launch pad. It's kind of like your training ground because, it's not a get rich quick. I can't stand when people say, oh, if I just sell on Amazon, I'm going to be rich. That's not true. It's like anything else. It takes work. Even the guys that transition from selling horse and buggies, some of them said, no, horse and buggy is going to come back and I'm going to stick with that. Well, they were hard-headed and they learned the hard way. The people that said, hey, you know what? I think a car might be a wave of the future. It's just a hunch because it's so much more efficient. I can drive it and I don't need to feed it. I give it some gas and I think this car thing might actually work out. Those people were the ones that ended up making multi-fortunes, right? Like over and over again. I remember a story, and I don't like to get into too many stories, but it's a great story. So when I was in finance, I was the finance director, and I mentioned that on a couple previous podcasts, but I was a finance director of a really huge, not just store, but a conglomerate of stores, right? And I remember I was sitting with the owner, and he must have been about 80 at the time. This is about 13, 14 years ago. And I remember he said, Mike, he's like, when this product came out, it was called Honda. And people were like, what the heck's a Honda? He's like, they literally paid me money to take a Honda store. Like, they were trying to get into the US market. I don't want to say they paid me money, but he was a mechanic, right? So when he was young, he was a mechanic that worked on cars. So based on his age, so this must have been in the 50s, right? Maybe 40s, maybe 50s, maybe even into late 50s. He was a mechanic on cars. He had the foresight to think like, hey, you know what? When this company Honda wanted to come into the US, he said, you know what? I think that's smart. It's eco-friendly. I mean, at the time, right? It got good gas mileage. It was a complete shift from the gas guzzlers and the muscle cars at that time. He says, I jumped in, and he's like, I went all in. He's like, Mike, I'm telling you, within 2 years, we would get these car carriers, these big diesel trucks, stacked with 20 Hondas. You couldn't get a Honda. People would follow the truck to the dealership and literally fist fight out front of the truck to buy them. And he's like, that was, and he took pride in the fact that he was there. He took that action. He took that step. And I don't want to give exact numbers, but I think that same dealership he sold for $100 million to Penske, right? So when they literally begged him to take it, and he was so smart, he owned the land under it. And that's where real estate always comes back into play, right? So he owned the land under it, and I'm pretty sure he leased it back to Penske. Penske bought it for $150,000 a month, right? He leased back the land that he already had the dealership on, cashed out, 9 figures, right? That's pretty cool. And I always looked up to that story thinking wow, what a genius. And he's like, Mike, it wasn't genius. It was that I had the nerve. I put everything I had on the line as far as my time, my family, everything. I put it on the line because I believed that the world was ready for a shift. And not a complete shift. I mean, people still love gas guzzlers. You drove my gas guzzler, Carrie. People still love them.
For sure.
But way more people like these eco-friendly cars.
Yeah, and that's the trend. Just like the trend is buying online, environmentally friendly, responsible cars are where it's heading towards. Electric cars and cars that consume less resources. So and
that's the same
world.
thing. So I just went to the dealership and I bought a Tesla cash, right? Yeah. And it's so funny. My friends and family are like, oh, what are you going to do if you run out of energy and all this? And you're like, are you kidding me? It can go 300 miles on a charge. Mm-hmm. I commute 4 miles to work. When would I ever be in a position to run out of fuel? And me and you joked about it. They call it range anxiety, right? Yeah. Do you get range anxiety? I'm like, no, I have free supercharging for life. I can pull off any freeway within 30 minutes, fully charge my car, pay nothing for it, and it outperforms any car I've ever had. My 7 Series was way cool, but this Tesla blows it away. And I'm just using that as an example because right now electric cars are electric cars, big deal. But I'm telling you, that's the wave of the future, not to be oil dependent, not to spend $4 or $5 a gallon on gas. Cost me $3-4 to fill up my car with electricity and go 300 miles. And it has 7 moving parts. I have no oil changes. I have no brakes, no transmission fluid, none of that, right? I'm thinking it's the wave of the future. I could be wrong. I have no idea, but
it is.
Elon Musk is the man, right? At 45 years old, worth $15 billion. He had the foresight to know that there was a need. He fulfilled that need. And it's the same exact mentality with Amazon. It's knowing it's only going to grow, knowing it is absolutely not saturated. It's the wave of the future. It doesn't take a lot of investment to buy inventory. Doesn't take a lot of guts, because when you get something for 10 cents on the dollar in China, you'd have to be pretty dang foolish to actually sell that for less than what you paid, right? Okay. So losing money is not to me a non-issue, right? But are you going to make millions out of the gate? I would just tell you straight up, no. But is this something you could build to? Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. I mean, look, the thing with the Tesla, we don't know if that's going to be the car that wins out or not. But certainly he took the least desirable aspects of the car industry and got rid of them. Like, the worst thing ever is bringing your car for service. I mean, it is a hate-worthy experience. And now they'll pick the car up from you or swap it, whatever. And
yeah, they
you
come to my, like, imagine customer service. They drive a tow truck to my house with another Tesla on it. If something breaks, load my Tesla on the tow truck, drop off their Tesla, and then bring back my car when it's done. I mean, this is absolute customer service at its finest. And like, to me, like, to never change my oil, to never worry about brakes, to not have fluids in my car, like, it just seems like an absolute no-brainer. And to pay less money than I paid for my 7 Series,
and then,
which was a cool car, but hey, come on, like, this is a way cool car.
And then the experience, there's no negotiating, no feeling like you're getting run over by the salesman. And that's what people like about Amazon is you go, you find a product you like, you click it, you pay for it, the product gets shipped to you. If you like it, you keep it. If you don't like it for any reason, you send it back. They don't care that you changed your mind. They don't care that you had buyer's remorse. All of that's irrelevant. All they say is we want satisfied customers, and we will do everything that we need to do to keep you, the customer, happy. And that's it. And that's the same outlook with Tesla as well. They do whatever they need to keep the customer happy.
Yeah, and that's a pretty cool thing, right? Because it's the exact Amazon format. It's like there's no such thing. Like, I'm a car guy, right? I said I worked in finance. I was a finance director for a conglomerate. And like, as a car guy, I knew when I went to the dealership, I was not getting a discount. You don't negotiate. It's like, what do you want? Like, hey, we're here to fulfill your entire needs. Do you want the car to have full self-driving? No problem. Check this little box here, and this is the price. And I'm like, hey, can you just knock off $500? And they're like, no. Same with Amazon. You're not going to go on Amazon and negotiate, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not a good negotiator, you're not an outwardly spoken person where you're willing to fight for those dollars, it's like everyone's on the same level playing field. Like, when I see another Tesla on the road, I know they didn't get any better deal than me. That's a good feeling, because one of the things I would experience personally is, like, as a finance director, it's like people buy a car. People pay different prices for a car, not the Tesla format, but every other format of every other automaker. By the way, Tesla is the only American car maker that's not in debt to the government, right? And I think those things kind of tie in. They have zero debt. They owe the government zero. Every other manufacturer owes the government money. And yet they command full price. But they do it differently. It's like, I can buy that car and know everywhere I drive, no one paid a nickel less than I did. It's just not possible. And even as a car guy, where it's like you're looking to get the best deal, you could still feel good to know. And that's how Amazon is, right? It's like you put your product and you submit it to Amazon. And what's so cool, it's like if someone finds a better deal or what, you're not haggling, you're not worrying about customer service. That's part of Amazon's deal, is they fulfill the entire customer service experience. And when they deliver at a super high level, guess what? It makes you look good. And you're the one delivering at a really high level because it's your product that they're just facilitating the sale. So like my user experience, like my actual like seller rating is a perfect 5.0 out of 5. That's not because of me. That's because Amazon does an amazing job of fulfilling the end experience. Like, isn't that cool? I couldn't train 50 people and get the best people out there to provide this kind of experience, because it's like the pioneers have the arrows in their back, right? We talked about that.
Yeah.
You want to be the pioneer, or you want to jump on the bandwagon of the people already crushing it and then just outmarket them. Like, to me, it's just a simple formula, but you know, everybody has to get out of their own way before they can actually do something like this. You're going to have negativity. You're going to have people telling you it can't be done. It's saturated. It might be your spouse. It might be your parents. It might be your kids. It might be a brother, a sister. might be your best friend. You know how many times people tell me like, oh my God, like you're into that? Like, why would you do e-commerce? Why would you sell online? Like, and I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm a pretty humble guy. I'm not going to stand there and say, well, hey, do you want to compare, you know, our income statements for the last month? It's like, hey, you have your preconceived notions. I'm not here to try and convince you. I'm just the people that are looking for a different path forward. I love assisting those people and putting my time in those people, not the people that you have to convince that this is the wave of the future.
Yeah, and it is the wave of the future. If you want to be part of the future instead of the past, then you got to go take a look at AmazonSecrets.net. Everything you need to be successful is on that site. You don't have to pay anything. Just combine it with listening to all of the podcasts that you've heard, and you can do it yourself. If you want more help's available. You just have to ask for it. In some cases, apply for it, but it's all there for you. Next time, Mike, I think we need to go revisit seller rankings and how you move up on the pages and why position makes so much difference to your success.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite topics. I can't wait. We'll connect in a few days.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.